he was a believer. He was quoted, I think in 1948, he was quoted as saying, the eyes of that extinct species of giant whose bones fill the mounds of America have gazed on Niagara as our eyes do now. And he even joked about the fact, because he might be a descendant because he was kind of tall, but he was a believer, and for probably the only honest politician we've ever seen, I mean that says something.
Yeah, it makes you think. I mean, it's just been so many cases, not just here in the United States, but in Brazil, all over South America, in the UK. I mean, Germany, I mean, they found, bones, like, thigh bones and parts of skulls that, it goes up to like around 18 feet, which would be really scary. So,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And, and then again, too, you have to look at it this way. I mean, did they originate from Earth, or maybe were they from another planet that came down on Earth and then, intermixed with humans, and then, so there's a lot of...
Well, that's a possibility too. Yep.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stories about, giants, attacking villages, for example, killing everybody, but saving the women and, bringing the women back and, things like that. Then they also talk about, that, the humans then would go back and, attack and, kill off the giants. So, I mean, I guess if there's more humans, than giants, I mean, eventually the giants are going to disappear. The same way as like the white men, right? When they started going over the Rocky Mountains and headed out towards, the West Coast, everything between the whole country. I mean, like the buffaloes and a lot of the wildlife became extinct or near extinct really fast.
Yeah, and that's... if you wonder, I mean, have you heard of the story of the Lovelock Cave in Nevada with the giants they found there?
No, why don't you tell everybody about that? I mean, a lot of the listeners don't know about giants. So, I mean, tonight we have you for another hour and 30 minutes. And so, volunteer everything you can possibly tell, to educate us.
Sure, I'd love to. Yeah, I mean, it's I found it all fascinating when I was coming across it. But the Lovelock story is interesting because there was also a gal. She was a Paiute Indian native, and she had all these stories had been passed down through her people, and so she wrote a book about it, and it was about these. And that's another thing. A lot of these giants, in fact, most of them, they all seem to have red hair. I don't know why that is, but in a lot of these legends and across the planet, when you start, they're a lot of times, most often red hair. A lot of times they have double rows of teeth, even like 6 fingers, 6 toes.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I've not to interrupt you, but I've noticed that the red hair and then the double rows of teeth and stuff like that. I sure wouldn't want to be bit by one. I'll tell you that.
No, and it reminds me of a more current story too. I'll share as soon as I tell you about the Lovelock one. But her story was passed down through their history was. There was these giants in the area, and they always warred with them. The giants were cannibals, so that all the Native Americans were always running for their lives from them. So they finally all got together and said, let's do something. Let's get rid of these things because they're a menace. I mean, they're eating us, for crying out loud. So they did. The natives all got combined and. Got together with their forces and they went after him. Must have had them way outnumbered, I'm assuming, and they chased them into this cave, Lovelock in Nevada. They chased them into this cave, and then they ended up setting a fire in the mouth of the cave, and the smoke must have been going in there. And I think when they tried to come out, then they shot them with arrows and whatnot. So that was how they got rid of them. So that was her story. But then. This farmer and I think this was early 1900s. They were excavating this cave, or a cave, in Lovelock, Nevada. They were just getting back guano out for fertilizer, and they come across these red-haired giants, and they were like, I think they were at least 8 feet and taller. I think 8 feet might have been the shortest one. Red hair, and then they started looking around, and they know there was charring on the cave from a fire. A lot of stuff to back up that same story that that was handed down through the Paiutes history, right there. And then so that the skull, and I think one of those skulls, I think they've even had that on Ancient Aliens. They covered a lot of this stuff too, but they have one of those skulls in a museum. Not the whole skull. I think it's just the jawbone. What happened to the rest of the skull? Who knows? Or the rest of the bones and whatnot. They're probably disappeared in the Smithsonian. But so they do have that, and all those stories. You get all this circumstantial evidence that keeps backing up. It keeps pointing in a certain direction. It does make you wonder that, well, can it all be a hoax? I mean, especially when you get stories like this that come back around and line up. So, I mean, that was I haven't read that gal's book. I really should read the book that she wrote about that, because and I don't know, it might be more. I'm sure it's more than just that in there, but. That's from everything I've heard about that. And they found other ones over in that same area, Humboldt Lake. Again, red hair, 10 feet tall, Spirit Lake over there, Spirit Cave. There's another place they found, I think that was 1940, somewhere, red hair mummy dated back, and they dated that back to like 9,400 years old.
That's a long time.
Yeah, and that's just over and over. There's all these stories. Can they all be fabricated? I don't think so.
Well, Ted, when you look at it, I mean, a lot of these, where they found this stuff was long before the internet. You know how things spread on the internet. I could get on and say something today, and by tomorrow, it's everywhere. But when you really think about it, again, in South America, the UK, in France and Germany, they all have found remains of giants. So that tells you that they're not just in Nevada or, wherever, or Minnesota, for example. They were everywhere.
And without the internet, too, you got to think about this.
Yeah, no internet.
In the ancient times, it would be hard to communicate this type of stuff, because you're either on horseback or you're walking place to place. So what you see might not actually be what you see, and that's why records could be falsified a lot.
Well, yeah, Kevin, but a lot of stuff, the Indians, like Bigfoot and stuff like that. I'll be honest with you, I never believed in Bigfoot at all. When I heard it when I was young about Bigfoot, I sat back and I said, "Oh, hey, these guys are crackpots." But in the early 2000s, a friend of mine at the time was a medical doctor. He just got done doing his internship. He just opened up a practice. I will say this in Puyallup, Washington. I won't say his name, but. You know what? We went to the Canadian Rockies because we were avid, photographers, and we wanted to go and we found the old internment camp from World War II where they held the Japanese prisoners. That was 2 miles out through the woods because the road has long been abandoned going to it. And we were out there, 2 miles away from the car, going through the forest. We started taking pictures of what was left of, a few little buildings and a mine that was there. And my friend says, "Hey, look over there. That's a tall bear." And I looked through my telephoto lens on the camera, and I go, that isn't a bear. So he quickly put a telephoto lens, and he looked. The thing saw us and then screamed, like the scariest scream I've ever heard in my life. We took off running and got back to the car as fast as we could. I got in the car. My friend didn't even have his leg in the car, and all of a sudden, I don't know if it was his mate or the creature there itself, but it was 25 feet away from the car, still in the wooded area there, because the roads up the Canadian Rockies, or like a 2-lane road, not much traffic, at least when we went there towards the end of May, early June. And it was standing there, and it bent a tree over, which was about 20, 25 feet, till it, made a snapping noise of the tree. The thing screamed at us. I stepped on the gas while my friend was still trying to get in the car. And I was halfway dragging him. The thing threw a rock, and my wife was gracious enough to let me use her car to go on the trip because it was new. It put a dent in the car. And,
are you kidding?
Yeah, and you know what? So if somebody comes up to me and says there's no such thing as a Bigfoot, I don't go tell people I seen one. But I put it this way. If it was a man dressed in a suit like that out in the middle of nowhere and was about 8 to 9 feet tall and weighed probably around 500 some plus pounds,
holy cow,
and could bend a tree over like that till it snapped, it really convinced me there is things out there. So, I'm going back to like what the Indians, handed down to their generation to generation about Bigfoot. Same thing about giants, like what you're talking about. It's been handed down and handed down, and I do believe it's real.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's been like your example there, and seeing something with your own eyes like that. I mean, that'll change you forever. That's amazing.
I have not gone, put it this way, I've been married 40 years. At that point, we went camping a few times. I have 8 kids, so we went camping a few times. But after that experience, I have not gone into any woods other than the little woods I have around my property, which is about 2 acres. I've never gone into the forest system again after that, or anywhere where it's wooded, because I'll be honest with you, it scared me. And
yeah, that would.
So,
did you get a good look at the face? I mean, what were the features like?
I did. Okay, it kind of looked like a human, but it looked kind of like an ape, but it kind of in between. It was. I can tell you this: it was extremely hairy, like an ape. It smelled like so strong of urine that even being like 25 feet from us, it nauseated you. The smell of it. And, I describe much more than that. It's really hard to, because I'll be honest with you. I peed my pants running because that's how scared I was.
You're scared, I know.
And when I told this here a couple times on my show, people would message me and say, why didn't you take a picture? Well, I'll tell you something. When you see something like that and they scream at you, you know what? It scares you to the point where you don't even think about taking a picture. You just want to get out of there.
Yeah. Wow, that is an experience. I wonder what. You must have just came across an area where you shouldn't have been.
I wanted to add something to the story. Think about this. Now, if something was tall, big, and hairy, and was living out in the forest or living out in the wild for such a period of time, they're gonna have like a weird off smell odor coming from them.
Well, I don't know. Have you?
I probably would have thrown up if if I would have been in that situation where my dad was seeing that little or that big.
Well, you know what, Kevin and Ted, no one believed me, so I quickly didn't tell anybody. In fact, my friend, like I said, he was a medical doctor. He said, "Hey, Gary, we'd better not see each other for a while because I don't want this to get out." Because he was so scared. He just opened his practice. Okay, he was only in practice for about a month before we went on this road trip, and he was scared he'd lose all his patients and be classified as a crackpot. But, when you think about, giants and Bigfoot, maybe they're, it could be the same thing in a way, too. It's really hard to say, It's when you see...
It didn't have a reddish tinge to it, did it?
Well, I'm kind of colorblind, but you know what? I'll be honest with you. I did not take the time to stare at it very long. I can tell you that.
Right, I wouldn't either.
He can only see
the other way.
Yeah, I mean, my only concern, was to get away. In fact, we drove for about 15 miles, on the pass up there. We come up to a little store. We go in the store because we were really still shook up. And the guy, we told him what we were doing, taking pictures, and the first thing the guy goes, and he was actually ex-American that went over